can all join pulse. And repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keep the palms joined. Put the palms down. All right. Good evening, everybody. Good to see you all here. It's Tuesday, right? On a Tuesday. Glad you could make it. You know, this practice it's challenging. It's really difficult because no matter what happens in your day, did anyone's day today go exactly how you thought it would? Mine didn't. I just was yeah? Optimistic? About the rest of today or the day that already happened?
About today.
Optimism's great. Yeah, it's. My mother always said, and still says, with life, you can either, when things go wrong or don't go how we want them to, she always says you can either laugh or cry. Two choices, laugh or cry. Now, there's a lot of choices in between there, but, and optimism is a great approach. But as we're being incredibly optimistic and we have our exciting plans for the day or the afternoon or the evening, they don't always go how we thought they would. And so then we're faced with opportunities to what we call practice, to practice what we learn through meditation, Buddhist practice of being kind and compassionate and gentle to yourself and others. And that's difficult. It really is. Who has a hard time being kind to themselves? Why? Why do you think? Oh, and if you are wearing a mask, please, if you don't mind, just pull it up over the nose. Awesome. We can hear you. Don't worry. Thank you. Why difficulty being kind to yourself? Sorry to put you on the spot.
Okay.
You can pass if you want.
The choices that I made.
Choices that you make?
Choices I've made, yeah.
Meaning, like?
I wish I chose differently sometimes.
So looking back on mistakes or things you've done or choices where you wish you chose differently, you have a hard time today having compassion for yourself because of the choices you made?
Yeah.
Does that mean that you're like judging yourself as this terrible person who doesn't deserve love and compassion?
Probably.
Probably. I'm not assuming anything. I'm just asking.
No, you're right on
Just a guess. Who else has a hard time being kind and compassionate to themselves? Why? Oh, anyone really? Go ahead.
Terribly hard on myself. Worst critic to myself.
Worst critic. Doesn't that suck? Why do you think that is? Any reason?
Partial anxiety.
Say again, partial anxiety?
Yeah, and then just like a lot of self-doubt.
Self-doubt?
Myself, yeah.
I mean, I'm not trying to play therapist here, but where do you think self-doubt comes from?
Low self-esteem.
Low self-esteem. Where do you think low self-esteem comes from?
Probably my upbringing.
Your upbringing. We could all just blame everything on childhood. It's actually rough for families that maybe came together, but that's really what we're sitting with. Now, here's the thing, is that you said the word 3 times, self. And the great news is in Buddhist teachings, there is no self. So that makes it really easy. There's no self to critique. There's no self to judge. There's no self to lack compassion for. So you're good. Glad I cleared that up for you. Who else? Who lacks compassion for themselves? We'll do one more. Yes, please. Yeah.
I'm not a good friend to myself. I can be a good friend, and I know how to be compassionate, but I don't do any of that for myself. I'm too judgy of myself.
So you're not, you're not a good, I also try to repeat things for our YouTube millions of followers. You're not a good friend to yourself. I hear that a lot. That often people who are caregivers, teachers, parents, whatever that might be, people become so good at giving and loving, and there's so much there to give to everybody else. And then all of a sudden you look in a mirror and you're like, well, wait a minute, I've never given love or compassion or been a good friend to myself. And that's a really common thing, unfortunately. And it can be a very harsh wake-up call. But the good news is you recognize it. There's a lot of people who don't recognize that, and therefore it's incredibly difficult to get to the root of what's going on. But once we recognize that we're incredibly judgmental of ourselves or hard critics on ourselves, or that we've never been a friend to ourselves, once we recognize that, we can begin to say, okay, well, now what? And in brief, before we start meditation, I think the biggest mistake that people often make with learning about this practice is we look at all these things that have occurred in our lives up to this point. And we spend so much time going backwards, trying to fix and heal and problem solve our entire childhood and upbringing. And it's in the past. Good to explore, therapy is helpful, good to understand, but we're going forward. So then the question is, what tools, what skills, what practices can you learn? So for the next week, the next month, the next 10 years, you don't spend more time doing the exact same thing you've been doing up to this point, right? Meaning there's no reason to wait any longer than like this moment to start being a friend to yourself. And the beautiful thing about that situation is, again, I've known you all of like 5 seconds, but I'm guessing you're probably a really wonderful friend to people, right? Wouldn't it be nice? You're all with her, right? Is she a wonderful friend to people? Super wonderful. Wouldn't it be cool to be that way towards yourself? So now you get to learn. So, all right. So with that, we'll start a meditation practice. A couple things I'll tell you, and again, to everybody who's joining us virtually, thanks for being here. Feel free to chime in, chat, say hello. A couple things I'll tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you with the meditation. You're not going to float away. You won't have any mystical, magical experiences. You're not going to figure anything out whatsoever. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit and breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you are in a cushion, often helps if you slide to the front third. Pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten. Same thing if you're on a bench or a chair. Stomach pushed forward slightly, relaxing the shoulders. Hands can be on the knees or in the lap, whatever's comfortable. Most important, especially for those who might be brand new, you're not trying to think nothing, you're not trying to go blank, you're not trying to empty the mind. Your mind will continue to race. I will say things periodically to remind you that you're lost in thought or to wake you up because you've fallen asleep. I'll guide us as we begin. We'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important, expect nothing from this practice. And starting with the eyes closed, if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed, whatever's comfortable. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. Expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. And as the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Where's your mind? Lost in thought? Return to breath. Letting go of expectations. Letting go of judgments of the practice. Just sitting. Breathing. keeping the mind alert. Aware of each sound. Each thought. Each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, just sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. knowing with each breath there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. No one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move, and most important, the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit, no hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakening. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in and where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens. more reactions. That's it. This practice is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day. And so all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. Imagine going a day without being disturbed by someone. Imagine going an hour without being disturbed by someone. This practice is not easy. It's not necessarily fun and exciting. It's not an escape, as often people think it is. If your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, meditation doesn't fix that. It makes you become aware of why your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess. So then you can actually make changes in your life. We don't meditate to be good at meditation. It's not about how many hours you log on an app or how long you can sit still or how much incense you can burn. It's direct perception into this present moment. And the present moment can be incredibly beautiful or incredibly painful. But it doesn't change the present moment. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's not a business. It's a lifelong practice. It's a way to help us understand the cause of our own suffering. As the Buddha taught the very first thing, he said life is filled with dukkha, suffering, discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction. By this stage of our lives, and if you ended up here on a Tuesday night at 7 o'clock, unless somebody dragged you here, you have already embraced the idea that you suffer a lot throughout your lives. And the second thing he says is, what's the cause? The cause is our own levels of greed, anger, and ignorance. We always want more. We're angry at the way things are. And we're ignoring the truth. Meaning, we spend our entire lives with our perception of reality, which is not reality. Our perception of ourselves, going back to the initial comments from the beginning, our perception of ourselves is not ourselves. That's just some story we've made up and reinforced in our head year after year after year about what we think of ourselves. And the crazy thing is, most people who tell yourself something all day long, all year long, and 30 years later, we've gone by telling ourselves the same story in our head. And then you ask somebody else to describe us, they're two completely different stories. So ignorance means we spend all day long thinking that our reality and our perception of reality is actual reality. And it's not. So we practice generosity, compassion, and wisdom to overcome greed, anger, and ignorance. And the third thing he says, the third noble truth is there's an ending to suffering. That's great. But the Buddhist path is not about waking up and asking ourselves, am I going to be enlightened today? For me, it's always been a practice of recognizing, can I suffer less today than I did yesterday? Can I help others suffer less today than they did yesterday? And then there's the path, and that's the Eightfold Path. And that's understanding and having correct views, thoughts, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and concentration. This is called the Eightfold Path. And all of that stuff is on Google and free. Google it, read it, and spend the next 10 years just trying to practice it. It boils down to one thing. Be kind to yourself and others. That's it. It sounds so simple. but it's not. It's a practice. So with that, I'll pause. For me, I really prefer to respond to questions. Meditation, Buddhist practice, anything that you're sitting with. And I'll use the rest of our brief time this evening to respond to your thoughts or questions. And again, for those of you joining us virtually, welcome. There's a chat box there. I can almost even see it. So feel free to ask questions or say anything there if you'd like. So thoughts, questions?
What's the Buddhist view on shame?
What's the Buddhist view on shame? Well, let me start by saying this, which won't answer your question, but I just want to, I'm very happy that you said, what's the Buddhist view on shame? Because it's important to understand that the Buddha was just a human, no different than any of us. Wasn't a god or goddess, was just a human. And he asked people, I believe, to explore the way they interact with the world and understand the nature of their own mind. So, obviously he shared teachings for 45 years. Not obviously, but those who don't know, he shared teaching for 45 years. He became called the Buddha, the Awakened One, at 35. He taught for 45 years and he died at 80. And they say there's 84,000 paths to figuring out why we suffer. I feel that what he wanted to do was have us explore all of these teachings and how we relate to them. Does that make sense so far? Again, I know I haven't even touched your question yet, but I wanted to start there. So the question is, what's the Buddhist's view on shame? My question to you is, what's your view on shame? Because here's the thing, the Buddhist's view on shame is kind of irrelevant. I get it, you're here at an intro to Buddhism class and you want to learn about Buddhism, and the common sense question would say, what did the Buddha think about, right? And then we want to try to draw some connection to that. And very often, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but very often we go through this process in our mind where we hear a teaching, whether it was the Buddha or Snoopy or Garfield or whoever. And we're like, I like it, I don't like it. That works, that doesn't work. And then we're back stuck in a box of trying to like or dislike, agree or disagree. The Buddha is just one more person that had views. The best way for me to feel that your question helps you is to start with you saying, if you want, or at least exploring and then share if you'd like, what's your view on shame? And what does shame mean to you?
I don't know if I could answer that. It's too much pressure.
So what you say, too much pressure? Sorry, I know, I'm really bad at putting people on the spot. I totally respect and honor and appreciate that. Anyone else just want to play along and share what their thought is on shame and what shame means to them? Go ahead.
I feel like shame more than anything is it's a feeling that you feel it in your chest. Your
Okay.
stomach, it's in your body a lot.
Okay.
And it's like you can't control it when you feel shameful. Yeah, like you said, you feel it. You don't really. It's unavoidable. It stays with you for a while and burns.
Okay. Go ahead here and then here. Yeah.
Probably regret and disappointment.
Regret and disappointment.
And kind of parallel to guilt.
To guilt. Parallel to guilt. Go ahead.
I think it's probably something that kind of developed as a way to control people, to keep them in line, to keep them doing what the society wants.
Something that developed as a way to control people. So the way others shame collectively as a group or there was another hand
Well,
or
I
something.
can agree with him. Like, I think a lot of times society wants you to live a certain way, And if you don't live that way, they make you feel guilty about it. So
Mhm.
it's kind of like when people say they want to escape the matrix. I don't understand. It's not really literally escaping the matrix. That's what I'm learning. But they want to keep you in their little bubble.
Yes.
They want to keep you in their box like a sheep.
Yes. Best 3 movies to learn about Buddhism: The Matrix,
Yeah.
Fight Club, and Groundhog Day.
Excuse me.
Which one is the first one?
Groundhog Day. Fight Club, Matrix, Groundhog Day. If you learn nothing else tonight, just go see those 3 movies. I get it, Fight Club is a little gruesome and they're beating each other up, so keep that in mind. But does that, I just wanted to get some dialogue going around, because to just say shame, it means so many different things to different people, and so I wanted to at least start there, okay? So then coming back to the question, did you agree, did some of that resonate with you?
I did.
Okay. Coming back to the question of what's the Buddhist view on shame? The Buddhist teachings and view on everything was never about making anyone feel guilty or not included, right? There's a kind of expression we embodied in the Dharma Bum Temple, and I'm not trying to make this about the temple, but this is something that we opened this with 15 years ago. And we started with the intention of whatever madness you have, whatever chaos, whatever insanity, whatever mess of a mind, all of that crap that you are carrying in your heart and in your mind, show up and we will welcome it. That was the message that we really got from the Buddhist teachings. That as a teaching, he wasn't trying to put anybody in a box per se. Now, I also want to say, and that's a whole other topic, they were monks and then they were nuns, and they did have precepts and guidelines that they followed for building healthy communities. So it wasn't like they just all got high and sat under trees and shaved their heads and called themselves Buddhists, right? They were very strict guidelines that they followed to cultivate kindness and compassion in a healthy, safe space amongst each other. But even from that, within those guidelines, all the precepts, as they're called, and they were anywhere from 227 to 311 precepts, were all set up to create what we often today would refer to as a safe space. That's what the Sangha, at the beginning, we take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, the triple gem. That third one, the Sangha, that's the community. We find safety, comfort, protection in a group of people coming together and trying to be vulnerable and open up and say, hey, this is how I felt shamed my whole life. Can I open that up and have others embrace me and accept me and be okay with that? Right? That's what I've learned from the Buddhist teachings. Now, I can't say that there's a specific sutra on Buddhist teaching on shame, right? So I'm kind of drawing some conclusions and some thoughts from my understanding of Buddhist teachings about people being honest and embracing who and how they are and being okay with that, regardless of what anybody thinks of it, right? So whatever race, whatever gender identity, whatever sexual orientation, whatever religion, whatever culture, whatever ability that you come from and are in, be that. Otherwise, you're just trying to please a bunch of people. And that's no way to live your life. Does that help?
Yes, it did.
Yeah. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Do you believe in like different? Because I've been in different dimensions and different realities. Do you guys practice that? Or?
So when you say you guys, you mean like me and these statues behind me, or who are the guys?
No,
No, I can hear you with the mask on. Thank you.
People that practice Buddhism.
Yeah, no.
No.
I'll make it very simple. I can't address what anyone's individual experience was, because if we all eat pizza, we will all have a completely different experience with it. So I cannot address your claim to have been in different dimensions, right? What I can say is, as a Buddhist and as a practitioner, I'm not concerned with dimensions. I'm concerned with, am I going to be kind to myself and others right now, right here, regardless of what dimension I think I'm in? Because all of that is just my perception of reality. So the Buddhist practice is not about focusing on getting into different dimensions or leaving dimensions or escaping from present moment. It's actually just embracing present moment, meaning this is it. Like literally, this is it. So that's the practice. Yeah, for sure. And let me just add, I always try to, my best, because I'm a very sarcastic person as well, I always try to really respect everything that everybody's sitting with, but at the same time, try to project what I think the Buddhist teachings are pretty grounded.
Yeah.
You know, they really are. They're very, very grounded in present moment of just, am I kind and gentle or not? And if you do have the ability to go to different dimensions, then be kind and gentle in all of those dimensions. Right?
Yeah.
Any books that you can suggest?
Any books? So I still think to this day, one of the greatest intro to Buddhism books is called Lotus in the Stream. It's on Amazon. It's out of print because they redid it in a different name. But it was translated by Tom Graham. He's probably about 60 years old now, from Ohio, somewhere middle America, something like that. Translated teachings from Master Xingyun, who was my direct master, but that's not why I love the book so much. I love the book so much because he breaks down the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, the six paramitas, karma, dependent origination, all the very core fundamental Buddhist teachings. And each chapter is like 15 to 20 pages. So I'm convinced that that book is all the basics that one would need to know for like the next 20 years of practice. Another one, and I am very biased as a Zen practitioner, is called Zen Mind, Beginner Mind. And that's about just cutting through all the crap that's in our head and being with present moment. Yeah. Other questions? Yes?
Well, how will we get the book if it's out of print? Lotus in the Stream.
They still have it on Amazon? Sorry, thank you. You just follow Amazon all day long, you know. It's on, you can still get it on Amazon. You just have to get used copies that cycle around. That's all I meant, yeah.
Can you repeat the name?
Lotus in the Stream. Stream like a river stream. Yeah. Years ago, somebody was selling like one new copy for like $140. But yeah, used books work just as well. They might even have highlighted the important parts for you, you know, if you're lucky. Yeah. Other questions? Yes. Yep.
If you could sum up Buddhism in one sentence, what would you say?
Such a great question. I mean, all the questions were great, but the question was, if I could sum up Buddhism in one sentence, what would I say? Yeah. That's a question, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry. I just also repeated for those virtually. Oh, wow. I would say at this moment, and if you ask me 3 minutes from now, I'll give you a completely different answer. But I would say at this moment, if I could sum up Buddhism in one sentence, it's the opportunity to understand the nature of our mind and why we suffer, comma, while we help others on the path. That could be one sentence, right? I put a comma in there. I like commas. So I couldn't repeat what I just said, but yeah. But that's the general, beyond the one sentence thing, the general idea truly, and I know some of you are probably here for like, who's here like brand new, first time, never heard anything about Buddhism before. So it truly, truly is, to expand on that a little more, is starting with, very often people think, I want to learn about Buddhism, and that it's about something outside of us. That it's this thing that was taught in India 2,500 years ago, 500 years before Christ, and it's in some other language, and there's all these other cultures involved. The heart of his teachings is getting to know yourself. Your heart, your mind, and how you operate. Why you do what you do. And then from there, truly figuring out how can I be a kind and gentle person throughout my day. And a huge part of that is helping others. Because you ever helped people? What's your name? Sorry. Yep, same person.
Jen,
Jen, have you ever helped people?
I'm a teacher.
You're a teacher, so you help people every day. How does it feel when you help people?
So good.
So good. So isn't it nice to feel so good?
Yeah.
Yes. So you keep helping people. In Buddhism, we call that the Bodhisattva Practice. Bodhi means enlightened, sattva is being. It's kind of like an angel. And as a teacher, you're already an angel. You know that. But the Bodhisattva Practice is to help all beings suffer less. Technically, they say to liberate all sentient beings from suffering. But that's a lot of pressure. Just think of it as I'm going to help people on my journey. And while I'm helping people, I'll help myself. And while I'm helping others and helping myself, I get to know myself. And when I get to know myself, I get to love myself and I get to be kind to myself because I deserve that also. Other questions? Yeah.
Looking at me.
Yeah. I was laughing at the hesitation of the like, oh my.
I think somebody's behind. Are the states of attachment, the concepts of attachment and clinging the same in your mind to your practice? Because
Sure.
I've listened to different things, you're talking about attachment, clinging, and I'm trying to decide if there's some difference.
So your question again, just to repeat, from my understanding in those virtually, are in my practice, are the concepts of clinging and attachment the same thing?
Right. That's the question.
I think the way they're sitting with me right now, like, again, and I'm using my understanding of the English language, which is terrible, and the way the word clinging and the way the word attachment sit with me, Jeff. And right now, I think they're a little bit different. And I'll kind of expand on this, for those who might be new. Just in general, when I hear clinging, I kind of hear it as like just this constant craving, desire, like to cling, I think is like to be stuck on something, isn't it? I don't know the literal definition of clinging, but that's what I think of, to be stuck on something. And attachment, we think of the same way. I'll talk about that in a minute, but clinging is like just stuck. And I think of like clinging as like we're these people that are, like the Buddha taught that our suffering comes from craving and desire. That's the heart of our suffering. We constantly crave and desire people and places and things to be different from how they are. And that constant craving and desire is what we chase our entire lives. Whether it's to look a certain way, to drive a certain car, to have a certain house, to have a certain relationship, to eat certain food, to have ice cream, whatever it might be. We have these constant cravings and desires. And the clinging part is like we get stuck on something and we're unable to like separate ourselves from it. And that's unhealthy. Attachment, I feel, is a little bit different in my interpretation of the word attachment in Buddhist teachings, in that attachment isn't about like being stuck on something. Attachment is, I think, has more to do with the word that's coming to my mind right now is control. Attachment is really about crossing over and trying to control and not embracing the impermanence of everything. Like clinging to me sounds like it's just impossible to unstick yourself from something. Attachment is like, I'm not understanding or embracing the Buddhist teachings on impermanence. Meaning, I want this person, place, or thing to be exactly how it is and in my life forever. Unless it sucks, and then we love impermanence, right? And the practice of non-attachment, to clarify for anyone who hasn't heard this, non-attachment isn't not caring. It isn't not loving. Non-attachment is actually ultimate, endless love and compassion. It's fully embracing, appreciating, loving, and respecting everyone as it is, but not attaching to your expectation of how you want it or them to be. Anyone here ever raised a child? Right? So there's this idea that we want children to be a certain way. But they're going to get to a certain point. That happens actually very early. But they're going to get to a certain point where they're just not listening to you anymore. And they're making their own decisions. Say again?
My kids started when they were 1.
Oh, when they were 1. Yeah, I mean, I said it started early. So at 1 year old, they're making their own decisions. But you're still kind of driving the bus there for a while. But at some point in time, you're not even on the bus. But your attachment is, you're my child. And you love them endlessly. So non-attachment would be to endlessly love that individual and embrace their choices without trying to control. Not just with children, in any relationship. That's really tough. So, I don't know. It's just some thoughts. Yeah. I think they're different.
I think so.
Yeah. I was good. You think so as well?
Yeah, good articulate. I'm trying to articulate it in my mind, but I think that's good.
Yeah. I'd have to think more like how I would tie clinging into Buddhist stuff. I'm not quite sure yet. I haven't
Some
actually.
people use that in meditations or in
Clinging.
they talk about clinging, and I'm trying to kind of, deconstruct it, if you will. Like,
Sure.
Yeah.
Could be like clinging to concepts or ideas or things or people. They might be interchanging clinging for non-attachment, and I don't think they work well together. I think they're separate. Yeah. Other thoughts or questions? We'll do one more. Yeah.
You said, correct me if I'm wrong, the source of our suffering is craving and desire.
Yes, I did.
So is desiring like something that we looked at as good, like an education or a job, a source of suffering?
No. Great question. So, and I'll close with this thought, I think. The question is, I said earlier that craving is the cause, or desire is the cause of suffering. So your question is the craving or desire for education or a good job, is that the cause of suffering? And thank you for bringing that up. The Buddha also taught that there are healthy cravings and healthy desires. Now, we want to be careful here, because are you good at convincing yourself of things? Justifying things, Like, I can justify why I can throw down 3 donuts right now, But there's nothing healthy about it. But in my head, I can justify why I do anything, right? I'm super good at that. And that's been something I've had to work on for the last 20 years with my practice is, am I justifying it because I just want to justify it? Or am I being honest? And this comes down to the morality practice. Like, am I being honest with myself? Like, what's really going on here? And so the heart of your question is really around intention. And the heart of the Buddhist teachings on this is around intention, meaning the Buddha said there are healthy cravings, healthy desires. Without the craving or desire to suffer less, nobody would be here right now. Unless you got dragged here. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So the craving or desire or intention or effort to have an education is beautiful. Then the question is, not to answer right now, but things to think about. What is the intention behind the education? Most people, there's a pretty pure intention behind the education. Your second question was, and I shouldn't speak for anybody, but I'm just generalizing in my head. I can't imagine too many twisted reasons to get an education. Like you're going to spend all that time, all that money, and do all that stuff. Intention's probably pretty decent. But your second part was, what about a job? So depends on what the job is. Craving and desire to run a gambling house, to make a lot of money and contribute to people's addictions, probably not a good thing to crave and desire. Right? There's very specific teachings on, this is called right livelihood, on what the Buddha said, which is a healthy way to live your life. And I'm not big at all on getting into too many details because I want people to explore in their own mind. I think most people have a relatively decent sense of morality. And I think most people have a very decent kind of moral compass where we know. You ever done anything really stupid and harmful?
Yeah.
Did you know it? Yeah. You ever done anything really wonderful? Did you know it? They're usually pretty clear to us. So when our intention is driven on greed, anger, and ignorance, meaning it's all about me, then that craving and that desire, you might want to question that a little bit. Now, for years, a similar question has come up, especially working with college kids so much, is, well, I want to have a good career because I want to make a lot of money and then I want to give everything back. Really? Is that how it's going to work? And what are you doing to make the money? Are you even enjoying it? How is it impacting the world that we're living in? Like, again, all these steps, we could justify 10 things. And at the end of the day, we're saying, well, I just want to make a lot of money so I can give it back and help people. But you just slaughtered a bunch of people the whole way through. Just so 25 years from now, you could, sit there and say, I have money to help people. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So, yeah, I'll kind of pause there, I think. And I think, again, for those who are new to practice, it's great to explore these things in your life. Like, okay, this is my career. This is my job. What is the impact that this job is having on the world we live in? What's the impact? And sometimes we don't have a choice. Sometimes we have ourselves and people to feed. And we just need a job because we need some income to be able to eat and put a roof over our head. So again, to kind of close, it's not about like, I don't know, maybe someone in here, is anyone in here run a gambling house? That was the example I used. So, right? So if there was someone who owned a gambling house, all of a sudden, this isn't meant to like put guilt or shame on, coming back to shame on someone for running a gambling house. It's meant to ask ourselves honestly, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? And how is it impacting the world around me? I think that's what Buddha wanted us to really explore, is these questions. So, yeah. So I'm going to close on that. I see a long question here. Yeah, the question is, in essence, how do we extend compassion to people who hurt? How do we extend compassion for people who physically hurt others? Those who kill, rape, assault, manipulate, etc. Such a gentle thing to address at the very end. Unfortunately, the response, which doesn't always sit well with people, is you treat the people that have murdered and raped and caused tremendous harm with the same level of compassion that you treat everybody else. Because they need it more than anyone. Doesn't mean you have to like what they did. Myself personally, I've worked with people. I've been doing prison work for 20 years. I've worked with people who've murdered, who've raped, who've done horrific things. And they need compassion. So I'm not saying this is easy to do. The question of how do you, but you send compassion. The question is, I understand that in Buddhism we practice compassion to ourselves and to others. How do we extend compassion to people who physically hurt people? The brief response also is start by trying to practice sending compassion to yourself and those you love. That's really difficult. And when you practice that, you can then figure out How am I going to extend that? But if you see pain and suffering in others, it's easier. People don't murder, rape, and cause horrific harm to others very often without being part of a cycle that they have been in, and an endless cycle of violence and rage that needs to stop, and it's not going to stop with more hatred. So, all right, we'll join palms as we close. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all be at peace and free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to the more than 6 million lives that have been lost during this pandemic, and to their family and friends who continue to suffer to this day, to all of those in Ukraine and surrounding areas who suffer and have lost lives, and to the children and adults that lost lives at the shootings in Texas and Chicago. May they all be at peace. May we all be at peace and free from suffering. So before you all head out, our Dharma Bum host, David, has a few announcements. Sorry if we're going a little longer than normal, but some pretty heavy questions I didn't want to cut short. So David will make a few announcements before you all head out. Thanks, David.
Hello, everyone. I'm David. We opened the Dharma Bum Temple 15 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those who lead are not nuns, monks, gurus, masters, or teachers, and are not looking for students. They are simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice with others. Just about every night we have different classes led by different people from various Buddhist traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone battling addiction, drugs, alcohol, or anything else for that matter. A family sangha for parents, kids, toddlers, and teens, which currently meets once a month. And we also offer a half-day silent retreat the first Saturday of the month with an RSVP required. Everything we offer here is always free. The full schedule is on our website and also posted in the entryway above the shoe rack. We also have a lending library in the back. If you see a book you like, feel free to borrow it, then bring it back whenever you are done with it. Please straighten the seat cushion before you head out, and if a few people can stay and close these front windows, I would really appreciate it. Thank you for being here, and we wish you well. Hope you come back. Thank you.
Thanks, David.